as the years rolled on, and I'm in high school, then I went to college, I kept playing and playing, and I was playing in many different bands, in different projects and cover bands and dancing, because back then everybody would go to clubs and the band would be playing, well, she's a brick, doom, 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 house. And the music at that time was very bass and drum dominated, meaning that bass lines were prominent in every song from Brick House to you name it. Play that funky music, all those doom, 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 doom. They were very, very defined. And we used a funny invention, kids, called a 3-inch tape. Oops! You can't edit that the way you do now. But we had to be able to play that stuff, and that was my training. So, from playing live, I slowly got discovered and became what's known as a New York session musician. And that's how I played all of those albums, from you name it to you name it. I was lucky enough to record with James Brown to Little Richard. I mean, you'd have to look at the discography. And Mr. Liebman will provide that for you all so you can see what I've done, because he's the man when it comes to knowing who it is. He's the FBI, the Funk Bureau of Investigation for bass. And at this time now, I began to notice that I'm playing more and more in the business. And it's just like I said before, it was inertia. I didn't go, well, today we're going to start being a pro. It just took me. So as the years went on, I did more and more session work, more albums. And we had pagers back then and an organization called Radio Registry, where that we didn't have cell phones. They weren't invented yet. So we all had pagers in our pocket. And Radio Registry is the number that all producers, engineers, record companies had. So if you wanted a T.M. Stevens, a Jackson, you know what I mean, or Will Lee, or any of us, Marcus Miller, you didn't have our numbers, you didn't need to. You call Radio Registry, okay, I'd like to have Will Lee for a session at 12 o'clock for a jingle. And I'd like to have T.M. Stevens, which is true, for a Billy Joel record, Keeping the Faith. And they would call there, and all of a sudden I'd be walking in the street with my bass on my back. Zzz. Oh, call Radio Registry. We'd have to go to a pay phone, for those of you who don't know. Call Radio Registry, they'd say, I'm sorry, can you make it to the studio by 12:30? And you have a session with Billy Joel. And then I'd run over there with my bass on my back, and we would do like 4 or 5 sessions a day. That's how intense the music business was. I could do a Gloria Gaynor record at 10 o'clock, turn around and do Billy Joel at 12, and then have 3 jingles, commercials to play in the afternoon. So it was a very thriving business, and this is how I started. Once I did sessions for so long, of course, the artists begin to learn who you are. And people know who you are, and then they call me for a Broadway play, Your Arms Too Short to Box with God. And the musical director came up and says, Mr. Stevens, we heard you work on records and we love what you do. We love your feel. And back then, I would walk into a session. I could look at the chart and check it out. Because Anthony Jackson was like Mr. Read everything on the paper, you know, bad boy, man, good friend of mine. I'm more of a feel, get in there and whoa, and knock it out TM style. And they liked my feel, and they said, would you do this Broadway play? And of course, in my dictionary, the word no does not exist, because the worst thing you can do is not have it happen. And I don't believe in failure. I think failure is something that makes us afraid to step forward. The worst thing you can do, it doesn't work out, but then you learn from that. So I said, yes, I'll do the play. So we sat down and went to a rehearsal studio, played. He said, oh, I love your feel. They hadn't had the charts done yet. So they had their musical composers and everything compose the charts. The play opens. And what I did, I followed the piano because it's a gospel play, Your Arms Too Short, written by Vinette Carroll back then. And it was on Broadway. I can't believe it's on Broadway. And the guys playing with the left hand, you know, the bass players can follow that because piano players, especially gospel, are very left-hand oriented with that bass. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm following his hands. And about 2 or 3 weeks into the play, the director came down and said, Mr. Stevens, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, sure, yeah. We know that you can't read. I said, uh-oh, what'd I do? He said, well, you're not playing anything we wrote on the paper. where are you getting these lines? I said, well, I'm following the piano player's left hand. Well, he said, it just so happens what you're playing in the play is way better than what we wrote. So we decided to keep you on because you are killing it back here. What you don't have in technical reading ability, you sure have in heart and love, because you're back there playing and jumping up and down and going nuts. We prefer that to have someone sit down and read it and look bored and just play the parts to make money. You're playing from your heart. So at that point, they changed the book to what I was playing. Now, of course, I know what I'm playing, so I kind of looked, oh, I'm playing a G here, and I looked on the page. Oh, that's what a G is. That's how I taught myself to read. It was reverse. I knew what I was playing, and they copied me in the book, and I learned it. And then I had an understudy because I started getting a little itchy to go on the road and play and jump in front of people. And it was a young kid out of, I think, music and art or music school in Queens. Turned out to be a young man by the name of Marcus Miller. He came in to read. I couldn't believe it. And the rest is history on that, and we will go into that very shortly.